It's been some time since I made a video, and basically that's because everything in the garden has been growing nice and steady. We've had a really great December in terms of rainfall. It's been one of the wettest Decembers that I've seen in quite a long time. So I haven't had to do very much watering, and everything has grown in a way that really I haven't seen in most years. It's grown really well. These potatoes are an example beside me as to how well things are growing. Now, this is the main summer crop. What I wanted to show you today was I'm digging some of the early crop of potatoes that I planted back in August. Now, I made videos about when I planted those, so if you want to have a look at that, go back and I'll put a link to it. You can have a look. Basically, the thing to remember is that I planted these with a minimum dig concept, basically only digging where I needed to put the potatoes into the ground and then putting the straw over the top of that. I was experimenting in that I planted Nicola potatoes into these, which is the first time I've grown Nicola potatoes. I generally grow Dutch creams, which is what these are. And I wanted to bring you back and actually show you the result, because I'm quite happy with what I've actually got here. The Nicola potatoes are a really good size, as you'll see, and that's really encouraging, I think, to any home gardener to get a good sized potato. So let's get digging. But before I do, I notice I've got a little bit of comfrey here. There's a couple of spots where there's comfrey in the potatoes, and that's probably come because of compost that I have put in. Sometimes I get some comfrey roots into the compost because I grow comfrey around my compost bins. It's great to cut it and just throw it in and add it to the compost. But having comfrey growing in your veggie gardens is a real problem overall, because it's really hard to eradicate. The smallest amount of root that you leave behind will grow, and it's a real problem. So I'm going to be really careful in trying to get these comfrey plants out, but at the same time I'll probably be getting some potatoes. So let's see what we can find. Yeah, so there's the comfrey. Thankfully it's only got a small root, hasn't got any depth at this stage, so I can get it out nice and easy. Now, there's a potato, first one out, and you can see what I'm talking about in terms of really good size. So, straight away more. One little one. And they haven't gone really deep because I didn't really dig that deep. Let's get this one plant out and we'll have a look what we've got. Okay, I'll bring it up here, which you can see. So that's the result from one plant. And as you can see, potatoes of this sort of size are really encouraging. And they're nice and easy to scrub in the kitchen. Going to be really welcome. There's not a lot of small ones. There's a couple here, but not many at all. And that's just one plant dug. So it's not going to take me many plants to fill this bucket, which is what I'm going to do now. Now, I did plant a few Dutch creams up this side, and I think this is a Dutch cream because I'm noticing a size difference. You can see, so there, the Dutch creams to the Nicola. A big difference, a very similar flavour. Another good one. So here's two more comfrey plants that I need to get rid of, but I'll find what potatoes around I can. Again, I think these are Dutch creams that I'm finding here, because overall there's a lot more. They are generally smaller in size. So we'll loosen that up. Oh, I broke it off, so I'm going to get more comfrey growing here. I didn't win with that one. This one came out better. I think I got most of the root of that. This one again looks more like Nicola by the size of those potatoes coming. And as you can see, because they're pretty close to the surface and it's reasonably soft where I put the compost in over them, I'm able to get most of it out by hand. And that really avoids too much damage to the potatoes or the risk of forking them. Look at that, isn't that great in terms of size? Beautiful. It's another comfrey plant. Now, the soil around where I put the row in for the potatoes, but each side of it is fairly firm, but it does break up because it's not dry, and it will crumble fairly easily, but it's a little bit more solid than where the potatoes were planted themselves and where the compost was. So in this, there's no potatoes growing. Okay, so my bucket's full. I've dug, I think by my count it was 5 plants that have been dug. There were 2 that were Dutch creams, I believe, and 3 Nicolas. And so something like that is about the maximum size for the Dutch creams, whereas we're seeing potatoes like this from the Nicola. And a lot of these too, as you can see, it's this sort of size. There's plenty of them. Whee! Running away. But yeah, a really good result. I'm really happy with it, and So if you want to try some good sized potatoes that are really quite tasty too, have a go at Nicola. Now, as you can see, I mentioned these potatoes beside me, which are the summer crop, and it's doing really well, coming into flower now, but not going to be ready for quite a while in terms of digging. The area that we've got from these early potatoes will keep us going probably through till at least March, and then these will come in and we'll start using them. Last week I planted the late crop of potatoes. I have in the past often planted them at the end of January, but this year I managed to get them in the first week, and I think getting them in that little bit earlier will actually result in a better crop. So the most advanced ones of those are just beginning to show through. Now, while you are watching, I wanted to take you and show you some of my tomatoes and what's happening with them this year. This year I've grown tomato plants taller than I've ever grown before, and surprisingly enough, these plants that I'm standing amongst are Roma tomatoes. Well, that's what they were advertised as. I bought these plants as I do generally buy my Roma plants, and every year I have bought Roma tomatoes, planted them, and I grow them mostly for making sauce and that type of thing, bottling. Most years they probably grow to around about midway up the thigh, because they're a bush tomato and have lots and lots of fruit, but don't grow tall. Now, these shorter plants in front of me here are Rouge, and they are normally the tallest of the plants that I grow outdoors, and generally they outstrip the Romas by quite an amount. But as you can see, this year they're completely outclassed. Whatever seed they used, it wasn't that standard variety. I don't know exactly what it's called. A viewer might be able to identify it, but it's obviously an indeterminate tomato. It certainly is a Roma or egg type of tomato, and maybe they are correct in identifying it as a Roma, but it's not the standard one that I buy at all. And they've gone way past, as you see, the mesh that I normally have that is generally adequate in terms of supporting the tomatoes. They've gone past that. Now, what I have done is I have come in here and I have clipped most of the tops. There's some coming up again that I need to come and clip, simply to stop them going up and up and becoming a problem in the wind, and to force the development back down into the fruit. And they certainly are developing fruit, and plenty of it. Nothing ripe yet, but yeah, in terms of growth, this is really amazing. I think this year with the rain that we've had has helped. I haven't actually had to water these since they were really young. There's been quite adequate rainfall, and they're just doing fantastically. So I look forward to a good crop. How the crop actually comes and what the tomatoes are like will really be the governing factor as to whether this is something I want to grow again, whether I keep the seed and have another go at this or not. I do like the higher concept because it is easier from a picking perspective than when they're down low. You're often down on your hands and knees to actually find them and get underneath and pick them. But if anyone actually does know what these are called, I'd be really interested to hear from you. So that's just a short update of what's happening in the garden at the moment, and I'll be back with more updates as the season progresses.